Hey everyone, I'm Gautam aka the Seeker of Wisdom. I'm a manifestation coach, and in this video, we're going to be talking about why circumstances don't matter. Now, before I do so, I'd like to remind you guys I am available for coaching, so I offer hourly, monthly, email, and DM coaching. The link will be in the description down below, where you'll be led to an FAQ page, and you have all the information you need there. And from there, you can ask me for pricing details through my Instagram or via my email. So the link for those will be in the description as well. I also have a Facebook group where I upload resources from time to time, as well as you guys can ask me questions anonymously if you wish to do so. And I also have a mailing list where I'll post articles from time to time, like things that I can't post on my Instagram daily. I'll make it a article and I'll post it on my mailing list, as well as my latest offers for coaching will be posted via my mailing list as well. Again, all the link will be in the description down below, guys, so be sure to check them out. So without further ado, let's get to it. So what prompted this video was I was rereading a couple of different chapters, like randomly throughout Neville's books, because I have the Neville collection. And in the process of doing so, I reread the chapter on Your Faith is Your Fortune, titled, just look at the title really quick, A Formula for Victory, right? So it's the 27th chapter. So I'm not sure if the chapter is the same for all his other published books, because in this Neville collection it's chapter 27, but I'm not sure if it will vary or something, just to be safe. But that chapter is one of my favorite ones, because in it there is this story that whenever I face some type of circumstance that I feel like, oh my god, it's big, and recently I felt one like that, and I'll talk more about it further down the video. Whenever I face those kinds of things, I'll always remind myself of this chapter particularly, because this chapter has something that, this story is so powerful, and it really reiterates why your circumstances don't matter. So the story is about Joshua and the city of Jericho, right? So just a quick disclaimer, I'm not really too familiar with biblical characters. I know some, so I'm not sure who is Joshua, and stuff like that. So if there's any questions, please do your research there. I just know a lot of the biblical stuff just through Neville's books only. So just in case if anyone would have any questions, I probably may not know all of this, and you can Google those answers, because I feel like you'll have much clearer picture as to how who these characters are and what their role is in the Bible and so on. So just a quick disclaimer there. So it's about Joshua and the city of Jericho, right? So apparently this Joshua has wherever he places his foot, right, it's declared his. But when he wants to conquer the city of Jericho, right, there are these huge walls that he can't get past. So what he does is that he sends a let me look at the correct word here really quick. I have this book beside me, so I just want to make sure that I pronounce it right. So it's a he employs the services of the harlot Rahab. So I looked up the meaning, and it came off as a promiscuous woman. I don't want to use the exact word. You guys can Google the exact word, but I think many of you will get the picture when I say promiscuous. So he sent her as a spy into the city, right? And he blew his trumpet for 7 times, and the wall crumbles, and he conquers the city. So, and this was because of how Neville interprets it. This was a story that when I first read it, it blew my mind, because it really, when you look at it symbolically, it makes much more sense compared to if you take it literally. Why would you send someone into a city and blow your trumpet for 7 times, and how does the wall suddenly crumble, right? It doesn't make sense. But how Neville sees it is your awareness, your being, you as a person is represented by Joshua, right? Your desire is represented as the city of Jericho, and the woman that he sends in, that is his imagination going, and living in the end, right? As she enters the city, that's your imagination embodying the end state of mind. And finally, the like blowing off the trumpet for 7 times and the wall crumbling on the seventh time, that basically represents like the 6 days of creation, and the seventh day, which we have already talked about in a previous video. I'll link that down in the description as well. Is the we're talking about the Sabbath, right? So the seventh day is when you are taking a day of rest in your mind. Your mind is still, because it finally knows that your desires are a done deal, and that's what the like blowing of the trumpet for 7 times represent, right? And like whenever I think about circumstances and how impossible things may seem, I always remind myself of this particular story, because like it really shows like perfectly how circumstances don't really matter. That if I place my imagination, right, in the end scene of it all, in the end of it all, right, and if I do my due diligence and really assume that it's a done deal already, these so-called seemingly like big obstacles will just fade away into nothingness, just like how the wall crumbled. And that's a story that I always find myself reminding like myself of, like whenever I feel like things are always like against me or something. Because make no mistake, like people always have this impression that coaches have it all together all the time, right? And the answer is no. I mean, we are all humans too. And I think a lot of like coaches I've seen on Instagram, like some of the coaches who I'm friends with too, they will make it a point in their stories, like we are humans too, we have our moments too. But I think what really differentiates a lot of these coaches is their ability to bounce back really quickly, right? And they do so using these kinds of reminders, right? So I really wanted to talk about it when it comes to like SP, right? Because a lot of people tend to watch my videos regarding SP, so I'll always talk about it from that context as well, just to make sure that you guys are covered as well. When it comes to SP, like a lot of people love to talk about their circumstances, to me, through my DMs, or like my Facebook group. When I have to approve posts, I always see things like oh, my circumstances are X, Y, and Z. Can I manifest my SP despite X, Y, and Z? And then they will state all their circumstances, right? I think I remember telling some of my earlier clients before, like, I don't look for what you think I'm looking for in your story, right? Because when a client like goes on with like some of their stories and everything, I don't look for okay, what exactly happened. I'd rather look for how they phrase things, what their attitude is, and so on, rather than their story. Because to me, a lot of their story is irrelevant, for lack of a better word. In the sense that it's all noise, right? Like what truly matters, like, is the your attitude, your mindset towards your desires. Or like if I'm to rephrase it, like I think what really matters for me is what you think is the problem. Like I'm more concerned about what your perception is and how you think what are the problems, rather than the quote unquote problems itself. Because what I am trying to help you to see is that your problems are not problems at all, and that if you just simply focus on the end, you're going to get your desires, right? That's what I help the clients like see. And like people just can't seem to wrap their minds around the idea of how can this not matter. And they, in the process of like asking that question, what I see a lot of clients doing is they tend to defend their circumstances more. They tend to justify those circumstances more, right? And and a lot of it comes down to like focusing too much on the 3D and giving too much importance to the 3D. So one thing that I always do is I don't treat 3D as something that's so solid, something that's so set in stone, right? I see reality being fluid, right? That's why it doesn't matter like whatever SP might say today, or what they could have said like yesterday or the day before, or anything for that matter, right? It doesn't matter. Whatever that they say, it's irrelevant. That's what I always tell my clients, it's irrelevant. Like don't be concerned about that at all, right? Because if you give it importance, then it becomes important, right? So bring it down from the pedestal and don't treat things as being very solidly real. See them for what they are. They are very fluid. People can change their minds all the time. People can um, like really turn around, like 180, like just within a day. Opportunities may open up all of a sudden, unexpectedly, due to unforeseen circumstances, right? Things happens all the time. Like you can get whatever you desire, right? You never know how it's going to come, but all you really need to know that it's already yours, right? So like in that story, right, put your focus on what truly matters, which is the end state, right? Just like how he sent the lady into the city, right? You send your mind to the end of it all, right? And as you're doing that, right, over a period of time, which is in this story represented by the blowing of the trumpet for 7 times, eventually at one point on the seventh blow, you are going to receive your desires, right? All the circumstances, all the obstacles that were seemingly holding you back is going to fade away. And that's what you need to realize, and that's what you need to come to terms with the most, is it doesn't matter, right? I don't care what it is, right? Like third party or religion, race, a lot of like if you're from India, like you'll a lot of my clients, some of them like have this concern of like caste and everything like that, right? Which is, for those of you who don't know, it's like subdivisions within like the same groups, if you will. You may have the same you may from the same race, you may have the same language, and you may have the same religion, but even something as like small as like something like caste, for example, which is a further subdivision of things, can prevent someone from being with their SP, or that's what people think, right? But all of those things doesn't matter, right? It really doesn't matter. All you really have to do, right, is see it in your mind and accept it as true, and you keep going, right? And you keep going. And what do I mean by keep going is you assume it to be true. You assume that union is already done, and you go by life and you let things unfold at its own pace, right? And these so-called like circumstances will fade away. They won't exist. They will cease to exist. And like just like the walls crumbled, it will crumble, right? And keep going. So that's why I don't like treat my circumstances as something that's being like so real, or I don't give it that much of importance, because I know one way or another I'm going to get my desires, right? Like whatever that I desire is already mine, and one way or another I'm going to reach it. The how, I don't know. When, I'm not sure, right? Because it comes at its own appointed hour, and I just leave it. I just let it come, because I know that when I surrender, like things just happens to me in the quickest, easiest way possible. So I just let things go in that regard. And that's how I really deal with some of these circumstances. Actually, all of it, to be honest, is I just put my faith in the end scenes, right? So when we talk about like dealing with like circumstances and how do you overcome them, with regards to SP, let's talk about it. Like what I will normally tell my clients is see the end in your mind. Like use that as your motivation. Like that's the only confirmation that you will ever need, right? Because a lot of you tend to put emphasis on receiving a text from your SP, receiving a phone call from your SP, receiving some type of an indication, right? From your SP, like saying, like I love you or something like that. But a lot of you may not see it in the 3D, right? Like, because things are like maybe unfavorable, or, maybe they are showing you like some cold behavior. So, you don't see it. But the very fact that you can see it in your mind is confirmation enough that your union is a done deal, right? So my point is that the way I deal with circumstances is I treat my imagination as being the only reality, and I treat it with much more importance. I give it much more of a emphasis rather than what I'm seeing in my 3D, because the 3D is a result of my past thoughts, assumptions, and beliefs that's just playing out. But my imagination is my only present, And if I change it, I know that that has to be pushed out as well, and it's just a matter of time. So I make sure that my imagination, right, is really like on point all the time, like that I'm imagining the good things only as much as I can, right? It can't be 100% all the time, of course. So dominantly I try to, only like, like imagine the best things I can, right? And only try to hear good things, so that, like only favorable things then manifest for me in my life, right? So if I'm only entertaining favorable things, then I know that I'm not going to be, thinking and worrying about the circumstances that are seemingly in my way of me getting to my results, because that is not going to serve me in any way, right? So in your mind, don't, like, as you're imagining everything, like don't think about, okay, oh no, how am I going to navigate through my circumstances? They will sort themselves out, right? Your higher self will take care of it all. And a lot of people tend to get frustrated over the whole time thing, right? Because especially when you are manifesting things like through a crunch or something, right? Like you have to trust with a high level of conviction that your desires are already done. And the higher level of conviction you have, right, in my observation, right, the quicker it gets done, right, or within the time that you are actually aiming it for, right? So you have to assume it with a high level of conviction that it is done, right? And if you can do that, if you can assume that regardless of what you see, my desires are already a done deal, and if you can hold on to that as you go by your 3D, as you go by your everyday day-to-day tasks and whatnot, it has to show up. It has to show up in the quickest, easiest way possible. And all you really have to do is simply trust the process from there, right? This is why, like, when Neville was being taught by Abdullah, like, the whole going to the Barbados situation, like he was so adamant about, like, saying, like, like you are now in Barbados, right? Like even when Neville tried to discuss like certain details with regards to it and everything, especially like after he got the letter, and he went to the ship company, and he was like asking them like, okay, I need to get my tickets, and they told him like, okay, you only have like third class right now, you can't really get your first class tickets and everything. Like when Neville was discussing that, even then, like Abdullah wasn't like, oh, congratulations, you finally got your desire. No, he was like still making him live in the end, right? He didn't want him to focus on the middle, right? He was like, who told you you're going to Barbados? You are now in Barbados, right? You went to Barbados and you went in first class, right? That's what he said. And like that is the level of conviction you need to have, right? Like focus so much on the end that you're not even aware of the middle, right? Like that you're not even aware of the so-called circumstances that are potentially hindering you from reaching your desires, because the moment you start giving them importance or any sort of attention or focus, right, that's when you're self-sabotaging yourself, right? There's nothing you need to do, there's no figuring out to do, there's no action you need to take on your end of things to resolve those so-called like obstacles or circumstances, right? It will sort itself out. The only work you need to do on your end is to assume that it's done and feel it real in your mind as much as you can, right? And you just go by your life. So there's this like scene from Dune that I will later talk about, but before I do that, like recently I went through something and I had to take a decision, right? It was a couple of different options for me with regards to how I want to proceed my life. It was a very pivotal decision. It was a very important decision. And honestly, I couldn't take a decision. So I spoke with the necessary people because I had to, like make some arrangements formally as well. And I'll definitely explain it one day, like what the situation is. But I have to keep details vague at the moment because, things are, still in play. So anyways, so long story short, I wasn't able to make a decision on this issue, and I found myself becoming more anxious, right? I found myself thinking about this and giving more importance to the 3D, and I got caught up in it. And I had to call myself out there, and the best way that I found to deal with this circumstance was to surrender, because I couldn't make a decision. I couldn't choose either this or that. So when I couldn't do that, all I could do at that point, in order to save myself of like all the constant worrying or the anxiety, I had to just let it all go. I had to take my hands off the steering wheel, and I surrendered. And the scene that really inspired me was the scene from Dune, the latest one. I think it came out last year. I'm not sure. I think it came out at the end of last year. So like for those of you who have watched the movie, I think you'll recognize the scene. So in that movie, there's a scene where the good guys are being chased by the bad guys into a desert storm, right? So these desert storms are huge, right? So the good guys, like, they escape in their like a helicopter, so it's called an ornithopter, so it's like a flying dragonfly, like literally. And they use that aircraft to go into the storm, right? And because the winds are so like dangerous, right? Because like things are flying like 800 kilometers per hour or something like that. I remember they mentioned that number. So long story short, all the moving parts of the aircraft gets damaged, right? So the wings get torn off and stuff like that. So it's really intense. And what the character ends up doing, is he straps himself and his mother, and he just takes his hand off the steering, and he just retracts all the remaining wings. I think that was like literally two. Like it has like this aircraft has like 6 wings for context, right? By the time he decides to surrender, there's only two. 2 or 4, I think. Like I'm not sure. So he retracts whatever that's remaining, and he just lets the wind take the aircraft. So it's like spinning everywhere and stuff like that, and then it gets like it's like spit out, right? And some way somehow they get to their destination from there. They ride out of the storm safely, and they manage to land, albeit somewhat of a crash landing, but it was a safe one nonetheless. And they make their journey towards wherever they needed to go. And that scene was always so powerful for me. And as I was going through whatever that I was, I reminded myself of that scene, and I told myself, like, this is what I have to remind myself of. Like, just surrender to your end scenes, right? And all the circumstances will just fade away, right? How, I don't know. When it will come, when it has to. Like, I trust the process, and I simply go, right? Because a lot of people tend to put pressure when it comes to SP as to like how this is going to happen, when this is going to happen, rather than really focusing on the end desire itself and really trusting the process and surrendering to it, and rather placing the emphasis on their imagination, which is what you should be doing in my opinion. So this was what I did, and it really helped me. It was such a game changer for me. Like when I did that, I felt much better overall, right? Do I still have all the answers I need? No, I don't need those answers anyway, because I'm not going to figure things out. My higher self is going to figure it out for me, right? So all I am going to be focusing on is enjoying those scenes in my mind and knowing it's a done deal and living life with that satisfaction. So when you're living life with that kind of satisfaction, what happens is you're not holding anything back. You're not holding yourself back from enjoying things in anticipation of your manifestations, right? So I encourage you guys to do that. If you're manifesting your SP and if you're too focused on your circumstances, take the attention, put it on your imaginal scenes, feel it real, and go about your life, enjoy your life with a sense of knowingness that it's on its way, it's already done, and you keep going, right? So what about like jobs, for example? Like how do you deal with like circumstances there? Again, same thing. Define your goal, know what it is that you want, right? Assume it's already done, right? If it's a promotion, or if you want to get transferred to another office, or like whatever it may be, assume it's already done, and you go by life with a sense of knowingness that this is already done, and it's only a matter of time before things just unfold. The moment you thought about it, things started unfolding, right? The only way to quicken the process is to assume it with a high level of conviction and to go on, not to entertain any other sort of conversation in your mind, right? And to keep going. That's what I would do if I were in your place and if I wanted things to move really quickly, right? So yeah, that's about like how I would go about the process. And I just wanted to say, like, regardless of what your circumstances may be, right? Don't think, okay, yes, I want this, but don't add a but there and say your circumstances. Don't I'm not saying don't acknowledge them at all, because sometimes at times it may be difficult, but don't give importance to them. Don't think that they are hindering you from reaching your desire, because a lot of people tend to think about their desires very linearly, and they tend to carve out their path for their higher self or the universe to bring their desires to them, right? So I want X event to happen, and from there I need to go to Y event, and then I'll get my desire, right? And because there are obstacles in the path of X, Y, and Z, they think, oh no, so I have to solve X, Y, and Z in order to get to my desire. But that's not how it works, right? Because your higher self knows ways and means which you know not of, and things may come to you in a completely different way that you have not expected it. So just solely focus on the desire, right? And really just dwell in that as much as you can, right? And you just go about your life, right? So with SP, again, like, a lot of people tend to focus on like phone calls or texts or something like that. Rather, I would say, if it's marriage you're aiming for, just focus straight on marriage. If you are aiming for a relationship, aim for that, right? And really focus on that, because what you focus on becomes your end goal. Remember that, right? So and don't be concerned about the circumstances at all. Don't validate them by saying like why it's so difficult to overcome them, right? Your objective or your purpose in life is not to overcome circumstances, but your objective is to live in the end so that you may manifest it into your life, right? So don't even think about like overcoming circumstances, right? Rather focus on living in the end, and this will sort itself out. Your higher self will sort this out for you. There's no figuring out you need to do. There's no problem solving you need to do, right? Don't approach manifesting like a problem solving situation, right? This isn't math, or this isn't some corporate company that you're managing. You are living your life. You're not. That's one thing I always tell my clients is, managing a project here, because a lot of my clients are from the corporate sectors, right? And they always tend to treat themselves like a project. Like, okay, I have this to solve. Like, you have like 48 pending emails, for example, right? That's not how it works. Your job is to just live in the end, and these things will sort itself out. It's like having a genie, right? That's why I always like tend to view my higher self as a genie who can sort things out for me while I just live, while I just focus on the end and live, right? And I always say like circumstances don't matter, because I made a shorts on this, and it was like, your circumstances ultimately don't matter, because there exists a reality amongst the infinite parallel realities. There exists a reality where you have gone through all the set of circumstances that you've gone through, and you still manage to get your desires, right? Because a lot of people tend to like worry about this too, like, okay, I've done X, Y, and Z, I'll never get my desire. I said this to my SP, or I did this to my SP, I'll never get them back. But there exists a reality where you did all of those things and you still managed to get your desires, right? Because remember, there are infinite possibilities, right? And that is why circumstances do not matter, right? Because you hear this in the community, a lot of Facebook groups all the time. You hear people cheering up people, oh, circumstances don't matter. But here's the why. Because there exists a reality where you've gone through all of the things that you did, and you still managed to get your desires. And that is the key to remember as well, right? So don't give them too much importance. Don't think about like how and the when and all that kind of stuff. Simply focus on dwelling in the end of it all as much as you can, and your objective or your priority should be sustaining that feeling and addressing anything that pulls you away from it, right? And then like quickly going back into this state as much as you can, holding on to it, right, until it turns into fact. Right, so it's a mindset shift you have to do. It's a way of life, and you have to like incorporate, and and this will get easier over time as you're doing this more often for like different manifestations that you want, I assure you this will get easier to ignore circumstances. um, like I can ignore circumstances now way better than I used to back then, but that didn't hinder me from getting whatever I want, right? So another way is, I used to like use like blanket affirmations. So like, may everything be favorable for me, everything is always rigged in my favor, right? Something that covers a broad area with just one affirmation. So when I do something like that, like I'm assured that not only the things that I potentially think may hinder me is taken care of, but the unknown obstacles are also addressed as well when I use affirmations like this. And that really helps me a lot. Like if you're someone who deals with a lot of anxiety and stuff like that, like blanket affirmations really reassures you a lot. And that is something that I found useful as well. So guys, we've come to the end of this video. If this video resonated with you, be sure to drop a like and a comment down below. Turn on the bell notification so you'll know when I upload a new video every single week. Be sure to subscribe, and like really, like, every subscriber, every like, every comment really helps the channel, and it's growing, and I couldn't be more grateful for this, guys. Thank you so much for your support, and stay safe and happy manifesting. Peace.